Hello and welcome to Fintech Impact. I'm your host, Jason Pereira. Today on the show, I have Jason Early, CRO of BizEquity. BizEquity is an online tool that allows businesses and business owners to value their company quickly and easily online, utilizing not just their own information, but also over 2,000 relevant data points that give them a fair market valuation. And with that, here's my interview with Jason. Hello, Jason.
Hey, Jason, how are you?
Good. Thanks for taking the time again. For those of you listening in, this is our second attempt at this. Unfortunately, we got to the end of the recording when I realized it hadn't recorded properly. So there's a first time for everything, and this is our second time attempting this this recording. So Jason Early, Chief Revenue Officer of BizEquity. Tell us about BizEquity.
Yeah, and thank you, Jason, again for having me, and we're excited to be here. So BizEquity, we're a cloud-based, yeah, no problem. We are a cloud-based business valuation platform, and we set out on our journey about 8 years ago, as we say, to democratize business valuation knowledge for the business owner. So we put business valuation online through our patented 7-step process, and then we put it in the hands of those that serve the business owner. So our clients are financial advisors, accountants, bankers, private equity folks alike.
So tell us about your background before you joined BizEquity, and then the history of BizEquity and what was the foundation for it.
Yeah, so I came out of the financial services space. I spent 8 years with a boutique financial advisory firm here in Philadelphia, several hundred advisors, and was a managing director there. And then spent about 3 years with a consultancy out of Chicago, where we sold training and development content to the big financial services firms. And then I joined BizEquity about 2.5 years ago. Our founder is a gentleman by the name of Mike Carter. And Mike is a serial entrepreneur, has founded and sold several software companies, someone I've known for a long time. And after his second software company, he was working with Pete Musser. And Pete is a legendary technology investor here in Philadelphia, founding investor of Comcast and QVC and Novell and others. And Mike and Pete were investing in companies. And so the founding story of BizEquity goes back to a company that they were looking at up in Buffalo, New York. And these two very successful gentlemen had a lithium-ion battery maker, believe it or not. And very typical of Mike and Pete at the end of the meeting to ask them what their business was worth. And they listened to the two gentlemen kind of stumble through the answer to that question. And ultimately, they were 60% off on the downside in terms of the value of the business. And so getting on the plane later that day, Mike said, well, there's got to be a better way. And that was kind of the beginnings of BizEquity. And so it's been, I think, as I mentioned, about 8 years since the idea was born and the journey started.
Yep. Not an uncommon surprise. People have no idea what it's worth. So, and it's funny because we talked about the first time. I said oftentimes, and you think how backwards this is, most people just don't even take the time to kind of think they know what it's worth. And then when the time comes to actually talk about it or sell it, they really kind of maybe have a number that they've fixated in their head for whatever reason. And if they're way off, trying to tell them that their baby isn't as pretty as they think it is, because everybody thinks they have a pretty baby, can be a rough conversation. And I've seen that kind of blow back on valuators' accounts and others in the past where they just didn't want to buy it. So the good thing about your platform is it provides transparency. So let's talk about BizEquity and the experience. I go in as a business owner or as an advisor working on behalf of a business owner. What does the experience look like and what spits out of it?
Yeah, so it's a great question. And to kind of our founding team's credit, right, there's obviously the algorithm, right, and the behind the scenes, which is very complicated because we cover over 900 different industries, draws on dozens and dozens of data sets of transaction data and market comp data and things like that to be able to do so. But on the front end, it's kind of beautifully simplistic. So if you can imagine going through the 7 steps and inputting data, right, in terms of financial data on the business, you're going to watch that number dynamically change as you go throughout. So based on the numbers that you're putting in, you're watching the value of the business change. And ultimately, as you get through all the data input, you're going to arrive at a dashboard where you're going to see the value of the business. You're going to see a valuation history graph, right, which changes daily because market comp data and transaction history data, et cetera, that feeds our algorithm as that updates, the value of the business updates. So the user experience is very clean and simple and easy. And ultimately, it spits out a 29-page business valuation report.
Excellent. So basically, they're going through this thing. They're uploading data from different resources. I mean, you guys look like you have some connections built into the likes of Xero and some other financial institutions to pull in data that they're using. So it's live. Then, of course, they would have to normalize it, which in layman's speak is getting rid of all the stuff that business owners put through the business that isn't really quite their compensation or wouldn't be normal compensation for anybody else. And then you get this report at the end, 20 pages long. So tell me about what this looks like.
Yeah, so the report, so our subscribers, right, are financial advisors and bankers and accountants and they subscribe to the BizEquity platform, and for that, they get their own white label. So the report has their look and feel to it, and the report's going to go through several things. It's going to go through why valuation is important, a little bit on our methodology, 4 different conclusions of value on the business. So an equity value, asset value, enterprise value, and liquidation value of the business with definitions around each one. It's going to go through a financial summary and then a dozen or so different KPIs or key performance indicators that we kind of call McKinsey for Main Street, if you will. So not only is the business owner going to understand the value of their business, but they're going to get an inside look at these 12 different areas that benchmark them against their industry peers so that they can see how they stack up and ultimately have an understanding or an idea of what they need to do to grow the value of their business.
Excellent. So basically, it's also tracking that over time so they can see how these KPIs evolve over time because it's a valuable reference point. So based on that, tell me what the response has been and feedback from the end consumer in general thus far.
Well, it's something that we're most excited about, to be honest. And you think about kind of our platform, and we like to think of it as really a win-win-win from the standpoint of the subscribers to our platform really win. But ultimately, those that win biggest are the end consumer or the business owner, right? So our mission is to democratize business valuation knowledge for the business owner. And so ultimately, the advisors that serve them are subscribers to BizEquity. They're getting access to gaining an understanding of what their business is worth in real time at no cost to them. And so that's a tremendous win. And so the response has been incredible because we know, right, that only 2% of businesses value themselves in a given year. And so none of them have an understanding. And the big differentiator is this. If in fact they did go through a valuation process and they spent the $10,000 plus, they spent the 4 to 6 weeks, they went through the highly intrusive offline process, that's a one-time event, right? And then it's a snapshot of the value of the business at that moment in time. Whereas on the BizEquity platform, your advisor can come back to you on a semi-annual or annual basis and update the financial data, which is going to affect the value of the business. But as the market changes, it's going to update just the same. And so having an understanding of value at one point in time is very important. But more important is seeing what that looks like over time and as the market changes and as your business changes. Again, it serves as a guide to all the decisions that you make as a business owner. So your question was, what has the response been from the end consumer? And I think quite honestly, businesses are blown away that this is available to them as a resource. And they've just been thrilled that the subscribers to our platform have brought this to their attention. So we're very excited about that.
So yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised. I mean, the business is the most valuable asset that just about every business owner owns. And more often than not, it is the primary source of the retirement capital as they see it. And to not have an idea of what that's worth on an ongoing basis, which is what most of them live like, and then suddenly have the access to that, that's hugely valuable. And to advisors like myself, who typically deal a lot with business owners, when you ask an advisor, why do you target business owners, what do you do for them? Usually the response is, well, I just target them. I don't necessarily have anything special for them other than I target them. It's like, this takes us out of the realm of just targeting people with money to actually being able to provide them with tangible advice on the most important asset they own.
Yeah, there's a couple key things that you mentioned there and a couple stats that we love, which is the first is 78% of business owners, and this is a CNBC study, but it says 78% of business owners plan to fund their retirement 80 to 100% through the sale of their business. Yet I told you earlier that only 2% of businesses value themselves in a given year. So when you think about that and break that down, that's business owners saying, yeah, I'm gonna retire on the value of my business. I just have no idea what that value is. And so I'm hoping and praying that it's going to work. And hope is not a strategy, as they say, right? And so I think it's critical for the advisors that serve the business owner to now be able to understand the business value so that they can provide sound advice. Because without having an understanding of value, how can you possibly provide the business owner with sound advice? And it's part of the reason that we set out on this journey, which was, if I'm a business owner, how can I possibly make any decisions around succession planning or financial planning or retirement planning or risk management or know that I'm properly funded or any of those things if I don't have an accurate understanding of what the business is worth? Well, you can't, yet people have been doing it for years and years. And so the second point that you made is advisors are starting to call on business owners more and more. And we're seeing that too. And I think people tell us all the time that our timing is great. And our founder likes to joke with it. It wasn't necessarily great 8 years ago when advisors weren't calling on business owners the way that they are today. What we're seeing is Look, there's a $13.2 trillion opportunity here, which is $13.2 trillion of business owner wealth is set to transition over the next decade. So baby boomers, right, as a group, as a generation, are going to have $60 trillion to invest over the next decade. And it's coming from three areas. It's their home, it's their 401k, and it's their business. And so advisors are seeing this as a real opportunity to go in and help the business owners transition successfully and then ultimately manage that wealth. And so it's a wonderful opportunity for advisors today, but you have to start now, right? Because what advisors have long realized is by the time that business owner exits, the decision has been made. And Absolutely. It's hyper competitive at that point, and you can't expect to show up on that day and hope to manage those assets.
No, and back to the entire thing about this being a wish, it's like they're counting on it being the retirement plan. And more often than not, the conversation between the planner and the advisor is like, well, what do you think your business is worth? I think it's worth, I think I can get this, right? Like, again, if that's a wish, and then, the time comes for that client to retire and the business is not worth anything, anywhere near what it was, they're going to choose to keep on working, right? And, what has the advisor provided in true value then? I mean, they basically put together a bunch of fictional financial plans that had very little basis in reality because the valuation was broken. So this is just one of the ways that planning can be so much more powerful to people if we do proper planning, which includes, in this case, proper valuation. So thank you for the ability for the creation of an independent tool that does that. So now here's the thing. Now you clearly have a difference between this and the traditional methodology. You've already talked about like $10,000 to get a valuation done and whatnot. In general, have you received any pushback or reticence in belief that this is going to be as good or anywhere near it in terms of value?
Well, it's a great question, and there's a couple of points of differentiation that I'll mention. And you kind of mentioned the potential pushback from the accounting channel. We're seeing more and more accountants come on our platform every single month, and it's becoming a larger and larger vertical for us because accountants are viewing our platform as a way for them to scale their practice too. Because when you think about it, the value prop of traditional valuation wasn't just broken for the business owner. If I'm an accountant or a valuation firm alike, right, I have to charge that much money because it costs me so much time, effort, and energy to build an offline valuation. And so they view this, or are starting to view this, right, as a way for them to scale this practice and offer this service at a much lower cost and at higher scale to their clients. And so the founding chairman of our board was a gentleman by the name of Clarence Davis. And Clarence was the former COO of the AICPA, which is the largest association for accountants here in the States. And Clarence said, perhaps prophetically, that accountants will be our best clients one day. They'll just be our last. I think we're seeing that. The pushback comes in one form, really, and it's this, right? What our platform does not spit out, it's not a certified valuation report. And we do that on purpose because we'd never get through compliance at, the financial services firms and the banks that subscribe to our platform if, in fact, we were trying to make their people certified business valuation experts, right? That's not what the platform is designed to do. And nor can we as BizEquity attest to the fact that the numbers that go into the software are, in fact, accurate numbers, right? So there's a couple ways to certify the report. Number one, if the business owner's accountant or the advisor's accountant, what have you, attest to the fact that the numbers that went into the software were in fact from a tax form, they can certify the report with just a cover letter. Number two, our chief valuation officer who built the algorithm is a gentleman by the name of Scott Gabehart. And Scott is one of the foremost experts here in the States on private company valuation. He's written several books on the topic. He testifies for the SBA and the IRS. He's done nearly 5,000 offline valuations. And so Scott and his team will, So Scott and his team will perform certified valuations for our clients at a steep discount. Now, that's obviously not the business that we're in, but BizEquity is not here to kind of replace the certified valuation, right? There's always going to be a need for certified valuations for a number of different reasons. What we believe is that business owners deserve to know their value at any point in time and shouldn't have to go through the process to get a certified valuation anytime they want to know the value of their business. And so our platform serves as a way for business owners to quickly and accurately understand the value of their business at that moment in time and then beyond that.
So before we wrap up, I have three questions I ask everybody. The first one is, if you had one wish for something you can change in business, your business, the industry as a whole, what would it be?
That's a great question. I'm going to answer the question as it relates to the financial services space, which is the industry that we kind of serve, right? Which is to say that I think that we've done a fabulous job as an industry kind of moving towards comprehensive financial planning and comprehensive financial advice. And I think gone are the days of folks that are surviving as a single security stock picker, an insurance salesman, or having a kind of narrowly focused practice. But I think it's absolutely critical for those that provide advice to consumers and to business owners to have this comprehensive view, right? And valuation is just a very small piece of that. But I think that, look, technology is changing very fast. Consumer expectations are changing very fast. And it's more critical today than ever for advisors to be providing comprehensive, but technology-enabled comprehensive advice. And so you need to have the right tools in your toolkit. You need to have the right relationships and specialists in place for you to be able to provide sound advice to the business owner. And I think all too often, advisors focus on, we've always done it this way, and kind of the way they've done business in the past. And how you've won in the past is not going to be how you win in the future. And so I think all this pressure around comprehensive financial advice and things like that is a great thing for the industry. And I think consumers will continue to put pressure on the client experience. And I think at the end of the day, we're all much better off for it. So I think if very quickly we can get to a point where the client experience looks a lot more like it does in other industries, and the advice that advisors are in fact providing is more comprehensive in nature, I think we're in a great place as an industry.
So just so you know, that's a very common refrain amongst the various guests on the podcast. So you're in good company on that one. It's a big focus on comprehensive planning amongst the different guests that I've had on. The second question I have for you is, what are the biggest challenges you guys have faced in getting the business to where it is today?
Well, we faced a lot of challenges, but I think one of the biggest challenges that we at BizEquity face is we kind of created this market. So when you think about packaging up business valuation, putting it online and packaging it up and selling it as a subscription service through the financial services space, there was nobody doing that before. So our biggest competitor is really the old way of doing things. And so when you think about calling on some of the large financial services institutions and banks and things like that, they do one of three things today, which is they have a relationship, a third-party relationship that they refer valuation work to. Perhaps they have somebody in-house that does valuations on behalf of their people or turns them around for their people. Or third, they just say, well, we're not in that business and we don't offer that as a service offering. And so there's a lot of education that we have to do in terms of why it's important for their clients to know the value of their business and why that's good for them, right? Why that provides them opportunities to provide better advice or more products and services. And so there's kind of this educational curve that comes with creating a market or being the first mover. So while there's certainly a first mover advantage, it can be a challenge competing against the old way of doing things. And I'd say that's been a challenge for us, but timing today is really great because I think all these firms are starting to see that to be able to provide sound advice, they have to know the value of the business, again, if they're going to play in the business owner marketplace. So I'd say timing is shaping up to be a great thing for us or an advantage for us now.
Yep, I completely agree. I mean, just the trend in planning in general, and also the massive need into wealth transfer. You definitely have come to the market at the right time. But you're right, being a pioneer is great, except for the fact you have to explain to everybody what it is you do, because no one's out looking for your product necessarily. So the last question I have for you is, what excites you the most about what it is you're doing, gets you out of bed every morning, and keeps you going in the business?
Yeah, it's another great question. And I think the impact that we're making is very exciting. And I think that we're just scratching the surface. So I think I mentioned we have nearly 5,000 subscribers to the platform, but we have a lot of wood to chop, right? There are a lot of people that provide advice to the business owner that should be using the BizEquity platform, because there's a lot of people that own businesses that have no idea what the value of their business is. And we get notes literally daily in terms of kind of the impact that we're making on practices of financial advisors, but ultimately the business owners that they serve. So whether that's a better exit, whether that's a more sound financial plan, whether it's guiding their hiring and firing decisions, whatever the case might be, the impact that we're making on the business owner. And look, the reality is our platform is really designed for those Main Street businesses, right? The 99% of businesses out there that are privately held and aren't necessarily venture-backed or private equity funded. And those are kind of the belly of the beast, if you will, the companies that fuel our economy. And so we're really excited about the impact that we're making on those businesses and the communities that they're in.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the vast majority of businesses. So you're right. The VC and PE world, they've had those conversations multiple times over. The publicly traded, not a problem, but everybody else kind of stuck in no man's land. So yeah, thank you for what you guys are doing. It's a great tool. Now, I will preface, if anyone's sitting outside the U.S., that it's predominantly built for the U.S., but there are workarounds and people using it outside the U.S. So I encourage everybody to check it out. Try to value your own business while you're at it if you can. And thank you for helping create a tool that helps us service our clients better.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for having us on the show, and we appreciate it very much.
My pleasure. So that was my interview with Jason Early. Hope you enjoyed that. As always, if you enjoyed this podcast, please leave a review on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever it is you get your podcasts. Until next time, take care.
This podcast was brought to you by Woodgate Financial, an award-winning financial planning firm catering to high net worth individuals and their families. To learn more, go to woodgate.com. You can subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, and Google Play, or find more episodes at fintechimpact.co.